May 20th, Funding Committee meeting. Order. I want to reflect the record that we have Denise Ramsey, committee members. We have Jim Irwin, we have Scott Staples from the public, or citizens. And then we have John Martin, the Chief Hoffman, Jack Mosley, and myself present with Tim Fournier here at the table, and Mayor Chris Treat in the audience. And a special thank you to Rebecca Kidder for filling in tonight for Jordan, who was detained elsewhere. So, let's get started. You've got the minutes in your packet. Anybody have any additions or amendments to the minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Who seconded you?
I will. I didn't hear it. You got one.
Scott,
You can have it.
to know for Jordan.
That's just, you just what I've got.
All in favor? Opposed? Any? Next on the agenda is public comments. Are there any? We do have public here tonight. State your name.
State my name. Shane Knight, President and CEO of the Bryant Chamber of Commerce. I am well aware of the task that is before this committee, that the monumental responsibility that City Council will have, that the mayor has in addressing the stormwater issue. This has been an issue for years that this city has faced. I remember it well as the community development manager for the city of Bryant for about a year in developing the MS4 program and what was before us, and having to navigate, if you will, the dollars and the burden that it does put on our street department. The fact that certain pieces of equipment within the street department can't go out of the right-of-way. Sometimes you got to go out of the right-of-way to make these repairs. What I ask this committee to strongly consider are two factors. When an agreed-upon rate system is set, that we communicate this to our businesses no later than the months of September and October. That it gives our businesses time when they are developing their next fiscal year budget. They start those budget preparations in September and October, getting ready for the next coming year. Okay, so I ask that we give them that notification as early as possible, definitely no later than September, October at the absolute latest, so they can make their budget preparations. Secondly, that when implemented and notification is given, that we examine a tier system of implementation for our commercial businesses, going from the largest footprint first to our smallest footprints. The vast majority of our businesses in the city of Bryant will fall under that smaller footprint description. And what that tier system, what those increments look like, I ask that maybe we look at 3-month increments to where our smaller businesses have that much more time in their budget, but within the same year as the larger businesses, but they've got more time to implement this additional cost that is going to come to their operations. Am I making sense in that request? Okay, those are the only two asks that the chamber has. We do understand that this is a necessity. It is something that we have to do for the betterment of our community, and because of that, what we would like to do as a chamber is, once we have everything set in place, once we have the fee structure set in place, or maybe if the council or this group wants to do it beforehand, the chamber would like to sponsor a meeting with all of our members in Bryant, all of our chamber members, businesses, to where you can have that one-on-one communication time with each business that wants to participate, so they can better grasp this situation and what it means for the city. So we do offer that as a chamber, and we also would like to make the two requests that I previously mentioned. So that is all I bring now. If you have any questions, comments, I can take that, but that's where we're at. So just know that we are in agreement We want to work with the city to make this happen, but that is what we bring to the table. Okay?
Thanks, Shane.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Now, new business, Public Works.
So, introduction first, this is Matt Compton with RJN, and this is Dan Jackson with Lillian. So Lillian's going to be doing, or Dan's going to be doing part of the presentation, Matt will be following up with some more information. I'm just going to let him kick it off. I'll be over here.
Thank you. Okay, I think I can figure that out. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be before you tonight. My name is Dan Jackson, Vice President of Wildan Financial Services. We've had the privilege of being the city's rate consultants for the last several years, so we've got a very strong familiarity with the city. We were engaged a while back to take a look at the city's stormwater fees and to recommend a long-term financial plan that will enable you to recover the increasing cost of stormwater service, while at the same time, to the best extent possible, trying to minimize the impact on your ultimate customers. That's always one of the core goals of any utility rate study, is to get the revenues you need while minimizing the impact on your customers. We've completed our initial analysis. We've completed a draft report, which provides in excruciating detail everything I'm going to tell you tonight. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time with this PowerPoint presentation going over the highlights of the presentation and presenting to you our recommendations for a long-term stormwater plan. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about stormwater utilities in general, because it has become an increasingly important issue for municipalities throughout the country, not just here in the state of Arkansas. I'm then going to talk about how you calculate a stormwater fee. This is not a rate-making seminar, but I think it's important for you to kind of understand that there is a process and a methodology involved in how you determine a stormwater fee. We're not just picking the numbers out of thin air. Then I'm going to provide you a couple of different stormwater rate plan scenarios for you to consider, and then we'll summarize and talk about our next steps. So let's talk about stormwater management in general. I've been a rate consultant for 40 years now. I know I don't look that old, but really honestly I have been. And one of the things that I have noticed is that the issue of stormwater management has become increasingly important for municipalities, not just here in Arkansas, but across the United States. As more and more cities urbanize, as you get more impervious surface area, stormwater management has become an increasing issue. In addition, the EPA has issued a lot of regulations in the last 20 or so years that have required cities to properly manage stormwater and to create stormwater management plans. So your costs have gone way, way up in recent years in terms of stormwater management. In the past, when stormwater has not been really all that big a deal in many cities, what most cities have done is they've just sort of absorbed their stormwater utility generally into their water and sewer fund. So whatever your stormwater costs were, they were just sort of covered by your water and sewer rates. Well, as stormwater gets to be more and more expensive, that really isn't practical any longer. And so what you're seeing is more and more municipalities are creating separate stormwater funds that show what the true costs are of stormwater management, because I think it's important for your citizens to understand that it costs you a lot of money to manage, maintain, and keep your stormwater under control, and those costs are continuing to go up. So you have a separate utility that shows the expenses and the revenues from a stormwater fee that will go to cover all of those costs. So, just a little bit of background on stormwater across the United States. There's over 22,000 stormwater utilities in the United States. Not every state has them. Some states don't need them. They are primarily located in Florida, no surprise there, Texas, and the Pacific Northwest. In other words, where you get a lot of rain, you're going to get a lot of stormwater management. No big shock. Highest number of stormwater utilities are in the state of Minnesota, 229. Arkansas only has 2 at this time, Bryant and City of Hot Springs. Now, this information is about a year old, and I know a lot of cities are looking at it now, and I think you're going to see this number go up here in the state of Arkansas more in subsequent years, but right now there's only a couple of them. The average single-family residential monthly stormwater fee is $6.19. So the sweet spot for stormwater fees across most utilities is about $4 to $8, with $6 being the median. If you get over $8, you're starting to get into the higher tier. Below $4, you see a few utilities do that, but not really all that many.
You talking about Arkansas?
No, I'm talking about the nationwide. Right. I'll talk a little bit more about specifically Arkansas in just a minute. This chart right here just shows the breakdown of stormwater utilities. As you can see, this chart and the next chart right here shows that most of the stormwater utilities are in the upper Midwest, Florida, Pacific Northwest, and in Texas, it's mostly in the metropolitan areas, the DFW area, the Houston area, San Antonio. Obviously, out in the rural areas, you don't really need a whole lot of stormwater management utilities. Okay, let's now talk about the city of Bryant specifically. What you have right now is a stormwater fee of $3 a month for your residential customers and $6 a month for your non-residential customers. All of your non-residential customers, no matter how large they are right now, pay a flat fee of $6 a month. Now, how did we get there? How did it end up with this particular fee? Well, it's very simple. It's the same fee that Hot Springs had a few years ago. Now, why did Hot Springs have a fee of $3 residential and $6 commercial? Well, what they did is they established that fee on a temporary basis about 15 years ago. They were the first city in Arkansas that decided they were going to do a stormwater utility. So what they did is they decided they would do a temporary fee of $3 for residential and $6 for commercial, and then they would do a comprehensive study and determine what the actual fee should be for all of their customers. So what happened is they put in the fee, and then they got sued by customer groups that were claiming that the fee was not a legitimate fee. What it was a unfair tax on customers. Well, that was litigation that went around a lot of the country to combat stormwater utilities. So our Hot Springs rate got frozen for several years while it went through litigation. It finally went up to the Arkansas Supreme Court, and the Arkansas Supreme Court, based on the testimony of a certain rate consultant, determined that stormwater utility fees were not taxes, they were in fact fees for services. So after that decision came down, that opened up the door for Hot Springs to do a new fee, which is what they then ended up implementing. But the city of Bryant modeled its initial fee after Hot Springs, but it is important for you to understand that that fee was not really ever intended to be a permanent fee. It was always intended to be just a temporary fee, where the actual fee was going to be calculated at a later date. Now, right now, the current fee collects about $300,000 a year. And that, unfortunately, is just not enough to cover your operating expenses. And then to add to the burden, you have a significant amount of capital improvement needs in the stormwater utility. It's been identified as much as $95 million in the coming years of additional capital improvements. So when you tack on the fact that you've got a stormwater fee right now that was always meant to be temporary in nature and doesn't cover all of your costs, and you've got additional capital improvement needs, obviously that shows the need to have a new long-term fee. This right here is now Hot Springs' fee. As you can see, Hot Springs has instituted a new fee where they have done it on a tiered basis by impervious surface area. 0 to 10,000, 10 to 50, 50 to 100,000, 100,000 to 250, and 250 and above. So they have implemented this new fee over the last couple of years. Now, does everybody understand what impervious surface area is? That is the key to a stormwater fee. Basically, it's pavement. And when rain comes down, hits an impervious surface area, creates stormwater. And so the idea is those customers that are creating more impervious surface area should pay a higher fee because they're creating more stormwater. And that's exactly what this fee is going to recommend. Now, there's generally a 4-step process for calculating a stormwater fee. Again, this is not a rate-making seminar, but the process is very simple. First thing you do is calculate how much impervious surface area there is in the city, and your city staff has done that. You then calculate how many accounts you've got, both in the current year and the forecast period over the next 5 to 10 years. You then calculate how much it's costing you to provide that service, and then you divide You come up with a fee per equivalent residential unit based on the number of accounts and the impervious surface area. It's actually a fairly straightforward and simple calculation. Okay, now, what we're going to recommend is we're going to recommend a flat fee for residential customers. Most residential customers have fairly equivalent amounts of square footage. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got big homes and small homes, but the difference is not really all that great. And what virtually every utility I've ever worked for, they just charge a flat fee for every residential customer. But with commercial customers, it's a little bit of a different ballgame here. This chart right here shows that you've got about 635 non-residential accounts right now. You have 8,113 residential accounts, and you have 1,164 senior citizens account. Right now, you're not charging any fee at all for your senior citizens. But on the commercial accounts, as you can see, this is the spread of how much impervious surface area there is for each account. The vast majority of accounts have between 0 and 50,000 square feet of impervious surface area. As a matter of fact, the largest amount of commercial customers has between 0 and 5,000. Then, as you can see, you've got some between 5 and 10, 10 and 20, 20 and 50, 50 to 100. Once you get over 100,000 square feet of impervious surface area, you don't have that many customers, but you do have a few. So, that's why the idea of having a tiered rate is a good one, because obviously a shopping center that has 500,000 square feet of impervious surface area is going to generate a lot more stormwater than a mom and pop flower shop, and so therefore they should pay a higher monthly fee. Okay, now what we've done is we've done a forecast for the next 10 years of what your costs are going to be in the stormwater utility. We've also forecasted the number of accounts you're going to have. We can do that because since we do the water rates for the city, we've got a very good grasp of what your growth patterns look like. And so as you can see, we're forecasting that you're going to add about 170, 175 new accounts per year. And that's important because every new account is a new monthly fee, so that is factored into the calculation of a long-term stormwater fee.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
What age bracket is considered the senior?
Is it over 60 or 65? 62?
62? Okay, thank you.
Good question.
All right.
And Scott.
Hold on, after that. Neighbor over there.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
Now, this chart right here is a very important chart because this shows your current and forecast cost of providing stormwater service. It's broken down into two elements. One, the blue portion of each bar chart is your operating expenses. As you can see, they're expected to go up year by year. No great surprise there. Cost of everything goes up by 3 or 4% a year just due to inflation. And so your operating costs are going to go up. But the big factor is the amount of debt you are assumed to issue to fund long-term capital projects related to the stormwater utility. In our analysis, based on our discussions with staff and with Mac and his firm, we have assumed that the city is going to issue approximately $21 million in long-term debt to fund stormwater-related CIP over the next 5 years. A $10 million bond in 2025 and an $11 million bond in 2027. So you can see from the green portion of the bar chart, the amount of new debt rapidly becomes a very important element of your total cost. And that is what is going to drive up the overall stormwater fee in the next several years. Yes, sir.
Does the forecast cost of service include the staffing, the additional staffing that we were advised we need?
Yes, sir, it does.
It does.
Mhm.
And is that consistent with what you told us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Oops. Okay, this right here is just a description of the total capital improvement identified needs over the next 10 years. Mac is here to answer any questions about the CIP specifically. But you see, capital plans drive rate plans. The reason is because there is always going to be a need for capital improvements, But the decision must be made as to how you're going to fund them. Capital projects impact stormwater fees in three ways. How much do you have to fund? When do you have to fund it? And how do you finance it? And so again, like we said, for the purposes of this analysis, we're assuming that you issue debt of $21 million over the next 5 years to fund capital projects. That's going to leave a need for future capital expenditures, definitely. But it is at least a start and gets you down the road of proper stormwater utility management. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Let's get to the rate plan scenarios. Like we said, we are going to recommend that the city implement the following tiers for your non-residential accounts. 0 to 10,000 square feet of impervious surface area, 10 to 50, 50 to 100,000, 100,000 to 250,000, 250,000 to 500,000, and then any account above 500,000. The fee would go up proportionally just based on a multiplier, you know. I mean, a square footage of 500,000 or greater is generally about 100 times greater than square footage of less than 5,000. And so, for that reason, we're assuming, or we're recommending the fee go up based on that particular multiplier. So what does this mean in terms of the fee? Keep this, when looking at the fee, it's very important to keep a couple of things in mind. The $6 commercial fee was always intended to be a temporary fee. It was never intended to be a permanent fee. Secondly, a utility or a customer that has a 1 million square feet of impervious surface area is going to generate a lot more cost to the city than $6 a month. And all the stormwater utilities I work for, I don't know of any stormwater utility that charges anywhere near $6 a month for somebody who has 1 million square feet of impervious surface area. So there's two ways to look at this particular recommendation. One is that it means that those high-volume customers are going to pay a significantly greater fee. But the reason is because they're paying an unreasonably low fee right now. And so what we recommend is that over a 3-year period, the new fees be phased in. Let's look at the residential fee first. We would recommend, right now, the residential fee is $3 a month. We would recommend that that fee be increased immediately to $4.50 a month. It would go to $6 a month in July of 2026, $7.25 a month in July of 2027, and $8 a month in July of 2028. And we don't believe an adjustment would be needed in 2029. If you look at the non-residential fee, from 0 to 10,000 square feet, we would recommend the fee be set at $13.50, which is approximately 3 times what the residential fee is. And as you can see, the fee would go up to $445 a month for those customers that are 500,000 square feet or greater. In the second year, the discrepancy becomes greater because that fee goes to $1,200, and it would go to $2,000 a month by July of 2027. After that, it would go to $2,400 by 2028, and it would stay at $2,400 in 2029. The fee for the lowest non-residential customer would go to $13.50 to $18, $21.75, and then $24 a month in 2028. Once again, there's 2 ways of looking at this. One way of looking at this is that, yes, it is a significant increase for the large customers. But on the other hand, those large customers are generating an extreme, somebody who has 1 million square feet of impervious surface area is generating an incredible amount of stormwater, and that is costing the city a significant amount of money, not just in operating costs, but also in capital needs as well. Commercial customers generate a much greater demand on the system than residential customers do for the most part. And so, while the fee is significantly higher, it has been artificially low for many, many years. And now we're just correcting a long overdue problem. This is the exact same issue that the city of Hot Springs faced a few years ago. And yes, some of their commercial customers were not particularly happy when the new fees went in, but most people understood why it needed to be done. The second thing is that stormwater costs are significantly greater today than they were a few years ago. And the financial and capital burdens on the city are very, very high. Yes, sir?
Do you find that one of the reasons other cities in this state have not moved quicker in this direction is because they are trying to play catch-up
I think that's a fair point.
over the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I think that is a fair point, and I think you're going to see a lot more separate stormwater utilities, because it just, given how much the costs are going up, it just isn't sustainable for a water and sewer fund to continue to subsidize those costs over the next 5 to 10 years. They're gonna have to do something different. Yes, sir?
I noticed that, we kind of freezes at 2029,
Mm-hmm.
2028. We
Right.
still gonna be costing, increased cost every year. Should we have an inflation factor or something thrown in there to handle that every year?
I think that would be a reasonable thing to do.
But it's gonna cost more than, in 2029, more than $144.
Yeah. I think there is, an argument can certainly be made, and many cities do this. They do multi-year rate plans, and then they say after the last year, oh, and by the way, after the last year, you're gonna have an automatic increase of 3% until the council or board decides to do something else. So that is certainly an option.
Jim, the intention moving forward as this progresses is to basically treat this like the water and sewer rates. And we'll do this feasibility study likely every 5 years.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So as you get, this chart right here just shows the forecast revenues and expenses of the stormwater utility. By phasing in the stormwater fees over 3 years, it means that you're forecast to under-recover a little bit this year and next year. But that's the price you pay for phasing in the new fee instead of doing it all at once. By the time the fee is fully phased in for the non-residential customers, you can see that your net revenues are just a little bit positive, which is where you want it to be. Now, there's one other thing that we did want to show to you, and that is that one of the features of your system right now is that you do not charge your senior citizens anything. What if you decided to implement a fee for your senior citizens? Well, the thing is, if you don't charge the senior citizens, you have to charge everybody else a little bit more to make up the difference. Because if you give one customer a break, the other customer has to pay the additional. So if you decided to implement a senior citizens rate, or that would be equivalent to the residential rate, you can see that the rate would cap out at $7.50 instead of $8. So if you did do a senior citizen, if you did begin to charge your senior citizens, it means that everybody else will pay just a little bit less. Instead of $8 by the 5th year, they pay $7.50. So that's one of the arts of rate making, is that you decide, well, who are we going to benefit? Who's going to make up the difference? And is charging everybody else an extra 50 cents a month worth giving the benefit to senior citizens of charging them nothing? That's only a decision that you all can make. Yes, sir?
Does anyone here know what the city was thinking when they determined that the seniors should be completely exempt? How far back does this go in price?
I mean, it was just designed that way when they originally went to the MS4 group. The reasoning.
How many senior citizens we have here in Bryant?
About 1,100 accounts.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Got lucky. Minority.
Does the train out, is it working?
That's your decision. Both of these rate plans will get you the same amount of revenue. Now the question, rate making is much a social and community and political decision as it is a financial one. And so if you decide that the best policy is to give senior citizens who are by and large on a fixed income, if you want to give them a break, which you can certainly is within your power to do so, it just means that everybody else has to pay a little bit more. That many cities do that. Many cities are fine with that. Other cities say, well, you know what? McDonald's doesn't charge less for a Big Mac to somebody who's 65 than somebody who's 35. So why should we charge less? Because their senior citizens get the same benefit of the stormwater utility as everybody else does. That's the great thing about being in your position, is that you all get to make that decision.
Playing the devil's advocate, which I like to do, because it helps me get to a decision or thought about what I could see a single mother saying, you just said fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 77 years old, but I too am on a fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact of these fees on me is just as difficult. And I don't raise that because I agree or disagree with it, or I'm just saying, it would seem to me that would be a
Yeah.
common question of people who live in Bryant on a fixed income, regardless of age.
Mm-hmm.
How does, this may be above or below your pay grade, but what, how do you respond to that?
Can I respond to that, Scott?
Yes.
I would say a mother that's in a fixed income is probably in a neighborhood that's even more threatened by stormwater issues. And so those are the people that are probably going to receive the benefit, whether or not disproportionately more as a result of having a very aggressive stormwater program.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying increase the senior citizens as well?
So how would you increase the senior citizens? Would you take away are you talking about taking away the discount and adding 4 1/4? That'd be a
Well,
huge
it's not,
hit.
it's not a discount.
There's not a discount, they just don't pay anything.
They'll
They
pay
don't
anything.
pay anything.
It's just
Right.
going to that.
No,
So that you would just-
discount on your water
Mhm.
bill.
Right.
You get, huh?
The discount on the water bill is strictly for the water and sewer rates. Just because this is charged on the bill, it has zero to do with water and sewer.
Mhm.
So when did we decide not to charge that?
I think it was almost immediately when we implemented the plan in 2015. Within a year, I think
Okay, so
they
2015 was.
yeah, was quit charging.
Right. Just to summarize, I hear this a lot because, not just in stormwater, but also water sewer, whether or not to give senior citizens a discount. The advantage of doing that is that many people over 65 are on fixed income, and that, that is a true benefit to them, and it is a true advantage for them. The downside of it is that a senior citizen's rate applies to everybody who's 65 or 62 and older. Guess what? Bill Gates is over 62. If Bill Gates had a house in Bryant, he'd get a free stormwater fee. So just because you're over 65 doesn't mean that you're destitute or on a fixed income.
There are a lot of residents who live in Bryant, I suspect,
Mhm.
who live in single-family residential homes
Mhm.
that aren't on the fixed income, or they have the financial ability
Mhm.
to pay.
Yeah.
But
The-
they get the discount.
Yeah, and
Not the discount, the exemption.
right, and that's why it's good for bodies like yourselves who understand the dynamics of your community much better than some guy from Texas does. And so you are in the position where you can evaluate the appropriateness of that fee based on the people that you know in your community and the demographics of your own community.
What percentage of our water payments are senior citizens?
Right around at 1,100.
Yeah,
Out of how many?
about
How much?
yeah, about 8,800 total counts, about 1,100 of them are senior
We have
citizens.
8,800 people who pay water, and that's it.
It's more because we have outside city limit accounts. This is not inside city limit.
Mhm.
So the number's a little different. It's actually higher.
Who's charging them?
Well, I know part of our water is Salem water and all that. I thought we had more people on the water system than what we do.
No, the sewer system's considerably larger than the water system. Because even our distribution system doesn't feed all of the city of Bryant's corporate limits.
Really? So how many people in the sewer?
You know the number off the top of your head?
Over 10,000.
That's more representation, really.
Well, you have sewer accounts that are outside the city. You have to pull those out and just consider the corporate limits.
10,000, not more than 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
But aren't there a third of the residents in Bryant that don't have sewer?
No, it's not a third.
Oh, I think it's a third.
But we're gonna-
So the percentage, we have to look at the percentage too. What of that senior citizen, what is the total overall?
About 11%.
Okay, thank you, Ted.
Mhm.
Ted adds on answers.
He's a math brain.
That's why I call him Hollywood.
Yeah, it's gonna fall over, so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's important when you figure out what percentage
Sure.
the seniors are part of that rate increase, would it not?
I I would agree.
I think it's an important input. Yeah.
Because that's what you hear people about anytime we have a vote or something on anything. It's the seniors who
Got out and voted?
are against it.
Mhm.
If I could interject one thing, another option would be is that you just start at 65 this year or whenever it starts, and then the next year it's 66, and 67, and 68. So anybody that's on their fixed income, they can plan for it, but then in the future, it doesn't. They just keep paying as time progresses.
Like Social Security.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Retire on 65,
next
next year it's
next
on
year,
66.
never catch up.
Hey, we don't want that one poor person at 65 right
Thing
now.
about it is,
They're
on
never
Social
going to
Security,
catch a break.
you have to start taking it at 70,
Mhm.
no matter what. But that's a good point too. 62 pretty young now. Isn't that right, Scott?
Yes.
I get that more. I mean, how many people would do that? I mean, big companies, cities would do what you're talking about, raising the senior.
I just think he was throwing an option out
That was
there.
just
Mhm.
something I thought of, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to throw a wrench into the monkey.
No, that's a good point though.
Out of curiosity, in your work, in the cities you worked with, is a senior citizen exemption and or discount common, uncommon, never, all the time?
Fairly common. I would say of the 200 or so utilities I've worked for, I'd say maybe 20% of them have some form of senior discount for water, sewer, or stormwater fees.
What age do they start on their senior?
Generally 65. I've seen a couple under 65, but 65 seems to be the magic number.
Well, that's when you Medicare.
Yeah.
Tell me again, what percentage of
Again, basically, I would say about 20%, based on my own personal sample
and this is in Arkansas or just
across the country.
country? 20% had either an exemption or a discount.
Right. And mostly it's a discount. It's very rare to see a full exemption. That's extremely rare. Most of them get like a 20% discount from the residential rate.
Sure.
And that's another option for you all to think of if you want to split the baby. You implement a senior rate, you don't make it zero, but you make it, say, 20% less than the residential rate. That way you're still giving a break to the senior citizens, but they're just not getting it for free. A lot of different ways you can go here. That's the beauty of rate making.
Isn't that what you hear when you go up against it?
Some people do.
Mhm.
Not many though, especially now.
But just to summarize my last chart here, we do strongly recommend that you implement a multi-year plan, whatever you decide. The beauty of a multi-year plan is you can put it in place, and the default option is to let all the adjustments go into effect each year. You always have the ability to come back and adjust that rate plan anytime you want. But the default option is to just leave it alone and let it go in. So doing multi-year plans sets you on a course that will ensure that your stormwater utility will be self-sufficient and will recover enough revenues to cover all of your expenses and will need no support from the general fund at all. I've thrown a lot of information at you all tonight. Probably might be best for you just to look at it, think about it, and then decide at a later date, which way you'd like to go.
On one of your first slides was about the bonds, 4%.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
How much will we have to have?
We're assuming $21 million in bonds over the next 5 years with a 30-year term at 44% annual percentage rate increase. Now, and that's another thing. I mean, suppose interest rates go down. You might, or suppose you don't issue as much debt as you thought you did. You might be able to scale back some of the rate adjustments.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, if costs go up higher than you anticipate, then you might have to adjust it the other way.
So my question will be, how much will that take? How much money will that bring in,
How much money will what?
the bonds?
The total debt service of the $21 million is about $1.3 million a year. So it's,
We'll have to cover that.
yes, you need to cover that and debt coverage too.
From the stormwater fund.
from the stormwater fund.
I think you need to be mindful of the rate, because you made a comment, we come back and change the rate. You can't come back and change the rate if you bonded that money out. If you're
Mhm.
committed to that.
Right.
Come back and change it.
And bond advisors love multi-year rate plans because it shows a commitment on the part of the city that they are going to implement the rates necessary to pay their beloved debt service.
I mean, that's the bottom line, is covering your debt service.
Right. Mhm.
The chart where you talked about City of Bryant versus City of Hot Springs, those are flat fees that they pay.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that was a multiplier as well.
Mhm.
Jim, the first thing you guys got, there's $95 million worth of projects. So that 21 million would be, a little bit less than a third.
The bonds,
Mhm.
that's still a long ways.
Mhm.
Well, some of those projects on there are $25 million projects.
Yeah.
So the 21 million actually covers the majority of those projects.
Is it pay rate?
Not less than a third.
It's on slide 15, I know this.
Yeah, but it depends on how you rank them, you know, what's,
Well, for instance, one of them is widening Boone Road and getting it out of the floodway. That's a $26 million project. The likelihood of us doing that's pretty slim.
And the study identifies the priorities, and it identifies the severity of the neighborhood.
with the residential, it's the biggest area. Like, Oak Glen's, that's the one that floods all the time.
Yeah, it's listed as a major, less than 5 years. It's a 3.7.
Yeah.
Do you have a net revenue forecast for scenario 2?
It's basically the same as scenario one. The report, the draft report, actually presents a lot of very detailed revenue and expense totals.
Tim, what's it gonna cost to run this department separate?
This is what gets us to starting to run the department separate. These fees.
But we still have to pay anything from the city funding?
From the streets department, no.
That was my next question. I want to make sure I know.
Great minds think alike.
What is the annual expense currently, I think, if I remember correctly, everything we do in stormwater and Bryant is a drain on the street fund,
Is roughly $500,000 at this point.
500,000.
How many people?
The operations come out of the street fund, the capital comes out of the fixed fee that we have right now.
The fixed fee generates a little less than $300,000 a year.
So 500.
Half the streets fund.
And so how many people you want to bring on board?
We based it on 2 people in a year and then 1 in 3 more years, and just a round number for some equipment, because we're not really quite sure what we purchased for equipment.
So if this was implemented, I'm assuming that 500,000 is freed up and is then obviously additional money available to the street fund.
Correct.
On an annual basis,
Yes,
which further deals with another issue, which is streets,
correct.
which we'll be dealing with
Later.
later. So that's a very positive.
Yeah, 100%, yes.
And it creates the stormwater fund, which will be fully self-sustained.
Correct. Yes.
So how was this received in Hot Springs when they implemented this program?
Most people shrugged their shoulders and said, don't like it, but I understand why it needs to be done. There were some complaints, particularly from the large commercial customers, but in all honesty, I mean, even the large commercial customers, many of them were rational enough to understand that if they had 1 million square feet of impervious surface area, it probably cost the city more than $6 a month to handle their stormwater. And so they kind of recognized that it was necessary. The phasing in really helped too.
So how much does Hot Springs bring in now for their stormwater study?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I do know they're covering all their costs.
And when did they implement the program?
They started the 5-year plan back in 2021, and I think the last adjustment just went into effect.
I guess my biggest concern is even with them, their largest customer is a $450 a month fee. We're talking about $2,400 a month. That's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that our chamber director's comments in terms of how to deal with the business community, do those make sense?
I think they make a lot of sense.
Right. Okay.
I think it's important, if this fee is going to be implemented, it's important to, get the word out. make people understand. I mean, all businesses need to understand what their costs are going to be. But the other thing is that, look, it's important to understand that you have a lot of stormwater costs that you're incurring right now. Your stormwater fees, as they exist right now, are not anywhere close to covering your costs. And all you're asking your customers to do is pay what it is costing you to provide this service. And that's what this fee does. And quite frankly, somebody who has a 500,000 square feet of impervious surface area is putting a lot of costs on the city. And all the city is trying to do is recover those costs.
So I have another question. So are you lumping in nonprofits like churches, schools into the same thing?
Yes.
Commercial?
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you know when Hot Springs did their review, their 5-year review, how much their cost went up? Or did it go up?
Well, they started out, they had the same fee structure you had, $3 and $6. And so they have gradually ratcheted it up to this point right here, where the residential fee is now $4.25, and the commercial fee, again, they made their top tier 250,000 square feet and above, because for some reason they don't have as many of the 1 million plus square feet as you all do. So they made their maximum fee at $450 a month right now. So that's what it is.
When you say 1 million square feet,
You have the city of Bryant has 4 customers that are over 500,000 square feet.
Right.
And 1 that is over 1 million, and 7 that are over 250,000 square feet. So that's 12.
Now, this
Pretty well.
slide that you showed us, that's when they first started, when they changed in 21, right?
No, that's what they are right now.
Okay.
because I can think of 2 businesses that has that much square footage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But it's impervious.
Right.
That's-
Mm-hmm.
3 businesses, I'm sorry.
What was the reasoning, I think I know the answer, but what was the reasoning to start July 1st with, like, this 5 weeks?
Half your point. You can start it whenever you want.
The reason I ask is that in my experience in trying this, it's difficult enough to market and sell increases in anything to anybody, actually. But I found when I would engage residents that if they understood that, we have a budget, a calendar year budget, and here's the revenue for this service, and here's the expense for this cost to you, you relate the two on the same timeline. In other words, if you do anything that's going to further confuse the ratepayer, in this case, it's just something else to deal with, as opposed to saying, here's what we're trying to accomplish, but you implement it at the beginning of your budget year. Which in our case, in Arkansas, is calendar year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Sure. It did. Yeah.
Scott, it was kind of just an artificial date for this presentation,
Okay.
just kind of showing, hey, if you started July 25, by July, what was it, 27 or 28, we're self-funded. That's
Yeah.
And one reason, Tim, I mentioned that is that, I'm into community engagement, trying to figure out what is the best way that we can explain this in an effective manner to the ratepayer in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason I'm bringing this up is that if we had, I think this is, you've done an excellent job.
Thank you.
And very excellent presentation. All of this is quite logical to me, comparing it to other places I'm familiar with. And you're right, Arkansas cities are probably going to be 5 years, they'll be following this approach. But that 6 months of lead time, I think would be precious
Mm-hmm.
for the mayor and our city council members to use that time to go out in the community, focus groups, town hall forums, whatever you want to call it, and explain the why and wherefores of this. Because it can be explained.
Mm-hmm.
It makes complete sense. It doesn't mean it's going to be a piece of cake, but I would just offer that for discussion.
So you're saying hold off doing,
I I think if you
I
could
think
put
you
this
have
in
to
place.
communicate to residents, if you can't just throw a.
Well, I know that, but what I'm saying is you have to put this off for 6 months,
Correct.
8 months. A department, a new department,
I don't,
Well, it's not an
I mean,
end.
was
it's
separated.
not ultimately my
Well,
decision.
yes,
but
Every
that's,
10th,
Scott's right, the education needs to get out there to the discussions and all that, and it's gonna be time consuming.
yeah, what you just mentioned is just accounting. You know, Joy, finance director, sets up an independent fund, it's created by council, it's necessary by statute, and then it has its own source of revenue, all the revenue goes into stormwater, all the expenses come from stormwater. This gives the man the staffing he needs. That's, I mean, nobody here needs to know that stormwater has been talked about going to the side of the city.
anybody lives there knows that.
Jim's right.
Yeah, and so.
That's what I hear more than that is infrastructure.
Right. Right.
And people don't, Glenn knows it's a problem.
One
People, all these other subdivisions know
one of
it's a
the other
problem.
benefits of the engagement, and I've talked to different people about this, is that, and this isn't unique to Bryant, is so many people out there, they don't understand, they don't have, I'm not criticizing them,
No, you're right.
because they're not involved, they got jobs and families and whatever. They are unaware of how services are provided. Well, they look at this like a business. You got, $27 million in revenue, and the council says, well, so much is going to go here. It doesn't work that way in government in any state, because you have fund accounting. So you have property taxes for this purpose, fees and charges for this purpose, rates, utility rates. You can't use these fees to hire additional police officers. If the city of Bryant could just effectively communicate that, and with what I have shown to Joy is one piece of paper, from my experience on it. It makes sense to them. You put it up and you answer questions, you explain, it's like a course. You give a City 101 course. Here's where the money comes from, and here's where it goes. And you talk about funds. And you've got X number of funds, and you talk about each fund, the purpose of that fund, and what they pay, and you can make a lot of progress with some of the, I've worked with some of the ornery people.
What kind of people?
Honorary.
Okay.
Honorary. No. And yeah. But they get it.
Well, the problem
They
is until you
appreciate-
commode and flush and water don't come out of the faucet, people don't complain.
They appreciate the time that you take with them. And I suspect that would be a first. To a great extent, like, okay, you're explaining this to me. Now I understand. You're still gonna have opposition.
Sure.
Because you could raise it 50 cents
Oh, yeah.
on January 1st. But I'll just tell them to call the mayor.
I do.
That's where it goes.
He'll let it go to voicemail.
Call Chris Street.
Text them the cell number.
Yeah.
Always, door's always open, phone's always ready.
I got that bulldog,
That's right.
protect you.
I think that lead time could read so
I
many.
think it's a good idea.
In other areas, not just stormwater, but future, solving other critical city issues.
We got a design?
Yes.
Time to step lots of bridge.
The status quo is,
So, Timmy, will this work for you?
Yeah, we've been working on this for a year and a half, 18 months.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's not just this, the stormwater plan, not can change it, but we'd add and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this worked, but not, Scott's right. I mean, we need to do the educational piece also.
Well, you're gonna have some people interested, some people will not be interested.
Well, and that's
That's anything.
probably true, and there'll be people that said they didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
We'll do our absolute best.
All you can do is, you send a newsletter in the water bill, having people read the newsletter. I do too.
Well, the
For the
latest-
minority.
That's true.
Chris, I don't know, Chris, do you know the answer to this? that email distribution list that the city uses for various media or informational announcements. I keep forgetting the number, but you've got X number of utility accounts. That email goes out to
Yeah, a lot more than that.
thousands.
Yeah, more than just our utility. We've
And what is the rate? Jordan told me once, I asked her, how many people, is there any way of knowing how many people open that email?
We had to mark it, we, notified if it's been read.
yeah, it's, we,
It's pretty
it's at
high.
40%,
Yeah.
which is great over the national.
Oh, yeah.
So we know they opened it.
Right. It's very, very popular. We get
Okay.
a lot of responses that they like that kind of communication.
One approach would be, now that the city has initiated the meetings and awards, would be next 6 months, take it to the board meetings. And, you know, I think you'd need some time, maybe the time we're taking. But, you know, the city would be making a concerted effort to communicate not only the problem, which nobody's gonna say, well, I didn't know we had a stormwater problem. But you're gonna be identifying a long-term solution. That would be one idea to think about.
One of the advantages.
You've already got these board meetings, you know.
Advantage or disadvantage, anytime you talk about a rate or a fee, it's kind of a buzzword and starts getting people's attention somewhere or another, so.
Yes.
Change the subject, Joy, this is gonna put a burden on y'all?
No, whenever we did the GL conversion, I checked into moving payroll from street into 515, and it'll take a little bit of time.
Don't get technical with me.
No, it might take us a little bit to do it, but we also benefit from y'all having a rollout time, because we'll get all of our ducks in a row.
I mean, we had to hire new people, more people to work there.
And for my group,
We won't give you much as we can.
It's because they're awesome.
I know they're awesome, yeah. Joy's been a long laster.
For hiring people out there.
I know that.
I don't think our expectation was anything, 2026 is what we've been thinking. Because we've got a lot of communication to do, comprehensive plan, we have a lot of public meetings, and so we're really building towards January 2026, here's what you need to.
This would be step number one in executing the strategic plan.
Right.
Most recently adopted by the city council.
But people more like, they're talking about people affected by stormwater.
Yes.
I mean, all of us are, some way, one way or the other. And so you have to read all that good reading at night.
Some of those pictures is
Yeah. You know, kind of like everything just dumps on us.
And I do think the other thing between now and January 1 is we can have more specific conversations about that capital improvement list. Right? Are there different ways we could tackle some of those
Yes.
so that we get a much better grasp on exactly what we're borrowing when to do those things?
Well, that bond, is that a one-time bond? Or,
There's two bonds, one is.
The two bonds, yeah.
I mean, what if we need more than what we thought we did? Go
At-
back and have to go start another one, and or we continue 4%
You'd-
value?
Well, we would still assume 4% unless the market changes significantly, and it might. I mean, interest rates have been trending a little bit down. So, but we would just rerun the numbers at that point if you needed more.
In these meetings, if the council and mayor decide to do it by awards, you know, et cetera, you got the capital improvement plan. You know, we've seen it. And you've got the priorities listed. So when you go into that ward, you're gonna have projects within that ward. And obviously, the people who live in that ward are gonna be perfectly well familiar. Oh, yeah, you got that right. That is a problem. You will be able to communicate, here's our solution, long-term, as to how we actually get this project done in your area. And it makes sense to them because you can easily explain the prioritization process and the severity methodology. So that's something to consider. I think it would further help if you could, at these meetings, identify this project in this plan would be implemented. We would construct this project in this year. With this,
Yeah, for the first bond, identify the
Yes.
projects that you actually
Yes.
wanted to do. I think that,
yeah,
I think Joy would prefer it that way too.
I
yeah,
think the bond people
the bond.
would require it.
Has the state made a priority stormwater funding? Is it an increasing issue with the state?
Yes.
So the opportunity would be there to get some ARC funding maybe?
Mhm.
It depends on how they do their rating. We will apply for everything we can, but
Oh, I know. And we got a good grant writer.
Who is that?
well,
Creation?
it's not to steal,
And then
not
there's Bryant.
not to steal Rebecca's thunder, but Ben Wilson does our stormwater grants. He's the reason we got him for the last 5 years.
Dave Wilson?
Yes.
Good old Ben, good old Ben.
He's got a lot of that too.
Yep.
Mariah's pretty good too.
We're not,
Yep.
we're eyes busy with water and wastewater. I'm not dragging her into stormwater.
Somebody did your Ben's been around, he's old as dirt.
That means something from you, Jim.
Because I'm not now the same way.
do these rates, when this eventually gets to the city council level, are these rates Brian, are they adjusted by ordinance or by resolution?
Ordinance.
Okay, so, and that would be three readings. No more than, well, 3 readings.
Could be less than
So
3.
there's another reason, obviously, to have this lead time. You could start the process of community engagement, and then, you could do readings starting this fall.
Any more questions for Mr. Jackson?
Very good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to talk about item number 2?
Yeah, it'll be just real brief. So you'll see some projects added to that prior capital improvement list here. They're just the ones we have identified multiple times in-house that needed to be added to it. But also on the grading over here on the second page, all the way 3 lines up from the bottom, that lowercase I, you'll see it says engineering judgment and knowledge of flooding issue within the city. Those are basically staff identified projects. It's just a rating that we know that the infrastructure, even though it might be in good condition, is insufficient. So we wanted that added to the rating. And that's all that would be.
So on this list that you, at the Jordan email, I know there's one item on here that's supposed to be an in-house project.
Yeah. 2
Okay, I was wondering which is the other one, Spring Hill Crossing?
lacrosse is divers.
Oh, lacrosse and Spiders, okay. And according to the mayor's memorandum, you've got all your easements, you're just waiting for it to dry out enough to get in there. So that's good.
Residents around there have asked us to wait until it dries up. So.
Well, you're gonna have to, yeah. They have crawdads in the backyard.
That sounds like a good reason to dig them up. and have
Have
it-
a ditch on it, have, we think they can work on it.
So there's a problem.
Yeah.
No.
So,
Maybe we'd be slim thick.
so that was just real quick, just on that update, that's all.
So Tim, what do you want us to do?
I would like you to take this presentation and dissect it and come back with some recommendations after that and how you'd like to see it done.
I think we need to, on the rates, we need to mull it over for 30 days and talk about it.
I will tell you I will not be here in the June 5th meeting. I will not even be in this country, so.
Took the word down my mouth, Jack.
Florida.
Nope. I will be in Belize.
Is it that bad working for the mayor? That you have to
Worse.
leave the country?
How are you thinking it is worse?
That's why it was hoping we did it.
Yes.
I think we've had a presentation shows you what we need to do.
It does. And it's, I mean, it is designed around those two bonds and self-funding, so that's the way
I
we.
mean, what can we talk about the rates? The rates of the
I
rates?
think we, I think, but we need to identify what we would do in that first bond, project-wise.
Project-wise or the rate that
Project-wise.
they're suggesting that we
Well,
charge?
is that a decision we should be making as a committee, or?
Or should they, because of the lead?
Yeah,
The city needs to
Right.
decide, yeah.
but we need to,
It needs to be
we need
identified.
to discuss the rate cost, like you talk about senior citizens and things of that nature.
And also your approach, if we're gonna go at it.
Is that what your ask is for us for next meeting?
Yeah, because I mean,
Brainstorm,
really,
tier
when you guys make the recommendation, our education, communication plan will be based on how you guys want to see this implemented.
So we meeting
In June.
regular meeting in June.
It's just not that far away.
Yeah, I think we want to get back on track,
Mhm.
because time
Slips
passes.
away, yeah. Do you need a recommendation on the stormwater master plan?
Yes, that needs to be officially from this committee to the,
So it can go to council.
and I think you could, as far as the rates go, your recommendation to council can have some leeway, right? Can council, we recommend these rate studies with these things to think about, and does that make sense? You can let council fill in some of those blanks.
So does the stormwater, does the act, was it 605, does that stuff apply to this at all? It won't. So like we can adopt, it'd be more like the Parks Master Plan, adopting that and not necessarily saying, okay, now we have to fund this.
Well, I think the stormwater master plan is the legal leverage for why, it's the why these figures.
Sure. Understanding that. I just wanted to make sure that by saying we adopt this master plan, we're then tying ourselves to funding that master plan.
I think you have to have a plan to make
Exactly.
progress, but we don't have to make progress all in 1 year or all in 5 years.
So like, for instance, you could, as a committee, say to council, we recommend this rate study in theory, right? But we do need to talk about schools and churches. Like, there's
We do.
a few of those things that if you feel, you can say, please consider these things.
I'd like to
You
see,
can pass on to council.
where we talking about the surface area of what is 250,000 and above.
You like to see what
Well,
businesses.
yeah.
And what fits into that.
But only, we think about businesses, we have Walmart, Target.
Well, I think that's gonna be the school. If I'm guessing, I'm thinking that's the school.
Ouch.
I don't think I don't think your businesses are, I think your businesses fall in that 7. I think the school is gonna be your
Well, I'm sure it
bigger.
is.
And, you talk about fixed income, they're fixed income. They only get the money from millage.
Right.
So,
It'd be nice to know how many we have, 0 to 9, 10,000,
no,
and
I don't disagree. Well, and that's in there. There's a chart that has how many fall in each of those. But
as many in which they actually are,
yeah, which ones actually are.
or which one is which.
When we voted that in, to start with 3 and 6, it was with the intent that it would be adjusted. So we would make that up because, we started working on that immediately, talking about it's not fair at all for Walmart to pay $6.
Correct.
When they got $1 million feet of impervious surface over there, and we're gonna charge Baker Jewelry the same thing,
So,
I'm just curious to know if that was the intent, like what happened throughout the years. We just.
I think it got tied up in litigation.
Oh,
What
okay.
what he
Like Hot
mentioned.
Springs?
Yeah, Hot Springs.
Okay.
I think that's probably what happened is that when it got tied up in
That
Hot Springs.
litigation just
it
wasn't for Hot Springs, that was to decide on the stormwater fee is a fee or a tax.
well, when we put that in place here, people threw a fit about it.
well, it's just like the $15 service fee.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they threw that out, and man, it had meltdown.
Because I hear more than anything else about water and sewer rates.
Oh, yeah.
But what's exciting is when you read about Fort Smith's going to have to jack up their rates because they have not improved them, right?
Yeah.
So if, you know, you back them up, you know, you will pay me now, pay me later.
That's everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's-
Just as another suggestion, when we set out this timeline, one of the things that we put in there was that you would have a workshop meeting with council, so that whatever members aren't here could be included in that workshop before they see it at council.
So, look, for our June meeting, you'd like to see the businesses that fall into
And
these
break down,
categories?
John,
Discuss
That's
our,
June 5th, I believe.
Right.
I think you're right, private school is the largest one. How do you handle school?
do we want to,
What's
do
that?
you want to include city council on June 5th, or do you want to have another workshop after that? Let's see, council.
It's up to you. I think if you feel like you've seen enough information and
I'd say let's have one more meeting of the group and then shoot for like that July meeting to involve council.
And what will we be discussing in that meeting?
In June, any kind of tiered structure that we would want to see, if the rates are good, or if we want to see an adjustment of rates, and then also the breakdown of who's going to be affected by what with those rates.
I think the gentleman presenting the tier rate already done the work for us.
but I do, what Tim pointed out about the capital improvement plan, if you remove Boone Road, right? I'm not saying we're never gonna do that.
Oh,
I'm
come on,
just
Chris, be
saying,
honest.
well, if the tiers can, that 95 million, all his calculations are based on the 95 million.
So you bring it down to 75,000. 75,000. Take out
Well,
the
but
road.
And it's still based off the bond.
Yeah,
Right.
but if you look at even the stormwater projects, there's a handful of them that truly contribute. Like, I mean, you cover your first 8 or 9 with that 20 million. I said 8 or 9, I didn't count them,
But
but
if you cover more than that,
you cover a lot of them. And, you know, I guess the flip side of that is, if you do that and then you have it for the first 30 years, then what happens when that 30 years is up? Then there's not necessarily other new capital improvement projects, do you think at that point, or do you think that
Oh,
never
we're
maintain?
But we expand.
Tim, is that not, I mean, the crew that you're gonna have are gonna be able to engage in those projects that are gonna be cost covered by the city, et cetera.
Part of, it's not just the CIP here, it's also creating a stormwater division to do the maintenance, do the repairs.
Sure.
as it happens.
Sure, but the bulk of it is
There's a lot of work.
Tim, our next meeting will be June
Yes.
4th or whatever. Does that give staff sufficient time to identify which of these projects will be done with the 2,000?
First time,
Okay. I suggest we don't take any action tonight, but at our next meeting, I think we should be in a position to make a motion to move the approval, recommend to the council that they adopt the stormwater master plan as a planning document.
I would like us
And-
to do that tonight.
Okay, right. I'll make a
Is that what
motion.
you want?
And then,
You made a motion.
and then at the June 4th meeting, we finish our discussion regarding rate structure.
Yes.
So that we give the council something definitive, because they should know that we're the ones that have been studying the issue and going into the details. And then, I would be all in favor of doing the workshop, so the council receives it, and then we workshop the subject with the council.
But how long would it be before council approval?
Well, the sooner the workshop, you can do
Well,
it.
that would be potentially July.
Yeah, what they about is, they can say, well, we need some more study on this.
Well, that would give you the potential for a July reading, August reading, a September reading, and then go into effect for into September into October for, or not going into effect, go into effect January 1, give your businesses their budgeting time
Right.
over the last couple months of the year.
You don't want to get too far ahead of the public engagement.
Right.
Well, but we're, at the same
Right.
time, we're just having readings,
We'll be-
so that the
Yeah.
public can be involved in those
Okay.
readings.
Just sometimes speak.
Okay,
Come,
Well, as long as I've been involved, working, helping improve places, right? a place to live. It seems like the city council can drag their feet in getting things done.
Well, that was previous.
Peter real heavy over here.
You're welcome.
I will say it's been a lot better than
Some of them in the room.
Just tell it like it is,
I'm
man.
sitting right here.
Tell it like it is.
I make the motion that the committee recommend to the council the adoption of the stormwater management plan as a planning document to be adopted by resolution of the city.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second? All in favor? Hearing opposed? Motion passed.
When's our next meeting?
June 5th.
That's what I've got.
Mayor comments?
Thank you all for your time and your energy. You're doing a fabulous job.
John Power,
Much appreciated.
You have a comment?
Dave, what do you think?
Me?
All on me.
I'll entertain
Don't
a
ask
motion.
any questions, I'll start talking for hours.
We're gonna take your kindergarten graduates.
I'm gonna add Ted's comments to that.
That's it, let's put it on there.